All right, hello, cheers, Kevin here, and welcome back to Minecraft Agoraphobia. And, yeah, we're still here in front of our computer, and we're going to be doing more programming in this episode, because that's what we're going to be doing. So what I want to do today is we're going to start tackling this, and we'll see how far we get. I hinted at this in the last episode, and kind of the reason that in the last episode we built this bundle tool that will take in some input script and give us an output script, and it'll go through and kind of inline all of the requires. The reason that I want to do that is because I want to write a tool that will allow us to make commits to GitHub. So GitHub is the place where we store our code for this series. There's a link to the repository in the description of this very video, and all of the videos of this series, at least I hope. Maybe not the early ones. But generally, you use Git in the following ways. So you might clone a repository. So you might say git clone URL. And what that's going to do is it's going to go ahead and it's going to find a Git repository at that URL. It's going to pull down all of the code in that repository, and it's going to make a folder and put the stuff in that folder. Then once you've gone into this folder, some project folder, you might say git pull. And a lot of times you'll also tell it pull from the origin, which is just a way that you're labeling that external URL. And you might say that I want to use the master branch, because you might have multiple versions of something that you're working on, and so we give those labels as well. Then we want to make some changes. Let's say we change some files. I might say git add file I changed .txt, or well, .lua is probably more appropriate here. And then I would say git commit. What I'm saying, sorry, I should explain that one. With git add, I'm saying, hey, I've made some changes to this file, and I'm about to basically make a quick save, right? And I want you to take into account the changes in this file when you make that quick save. Git commit is how we do our quick save. So I'm going to say git commit, and I'll say -m, and I'll write a short message of what I did, like fixed a bug or whatever. Okay. And then I can do all sorts of fancy things, like I can git revert, or I can go back in time, or I can say git checkout stuff and discard commits and things that I made. I can also push the changes that I've made locally that I have committed up origin to master. So I can push things out to that remote URL, which in our hypothetical example is GitHub. And this is a nice way of doing programming and making sure that your code stays versioned. So if you introduce a bug at some point, you can go back in time and see, all right, well, where did I add that? Was the bug before here or after here? And it's generally the way that, honestly, most programming is done nowadays, that you're using Git or Subversion, or, I don't know, it's possible that you use some other tools, but for the most part, those are the two tools. But the unfortunate thing about Git, I say unfortunate, it's not really unfortunate. The difficult thing with regard to open computers is that Git isn't a Lua program. It is a C-based program. So unless we want to write some sort of crazy emulator thing, which I don't, you may, you're certainly welcome to. I don't think we're going to get Git running on here. Now, that's fine. We do have wget, which is, hey, go ahead and get a URL and then save that file, which is fine, because I can go ahead and continue to copy paste every single file as we pull things down. But I don't want to do that, man. It seems frustrating. Okay, so what I want to do is build something that gives us kind of the bare bones of Git. In that I want to say, hey, there's this repository out there. I want you to pull down the latest contents of all of those files, please. Right? So let's think about, actually, and the other thing that's actually really important to notice is that, well, we do have wget, which it's webget URL. We don't right now have a way to make those Git commits and push up changes to those files, which is a bit frustrating when we're coding stuff that we can't really test in the Linux environment, and we need to test in open computers, and then we discover, oh, there's a typo, and I'd like to fix it here, but I can't push up that change from here, so I have to jump back into Linux, make the change, push it up, then pull it down over here, and blah, 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 blah. Or I end up with files that end up out of sync with each other. I would like to be able to, edit the thing I just downloaded, .lua, make the fix, and then, git commit, fix, and git push, push up that change. Those would be nice things to be able to do. But okay, so we've said that we can't really have git, which is a bummer. And of course we could write our own program, git.lua, and it could contain a subset of what git is able to do. But I think that's a bad idea. I think generally you want to, sort of the truth in advertising of programming is that if you have a program that has a name similar to something that already exists, it should do exactly what that other program does, because otherwise you're going to get confused. You're like, is this the git that is good or the git that is bad? I don't know. So I decided we're going to create our own version control system, and we're going to call it oaf, right? So we're going to create oaf.lua, and I want to be able to do those basic things that I talked about. I want to be able to say oaf clone some URL and have it pull down a repository to a URL. I want to be able to say oaf pull. Whoops, not oaf, not ol. Oaf pull from within a directory and have it go ahead and fetch all of the changes from GitHub and pull them down. And then I do want to be able to do some sort of oaf commit with a message, something. And maybe oaf push. I don't know exactly how we're going to sort that out, but that's what my goal is here. I don't know that we're even going to get to the point of getting most of these working just yet, but we're going to tackle some of it. Let's jump into the Linux land. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create oaf.lua. It's going to be another binary, and we can actually look at this too. We can just go ahead and copy our usage, and well, we can start throwing some some usage commands here. Yeah, so this is not going to be. This is going to be oaf, and it's going to be, well, I'm not going to write a usage command because in theory we can run multiple possible commands, right? Let's actually make that part work. So let's. Okay, this is a challenging thing because it's a wider scoped project. We need to find the very narrow case. And unfortunately, I don't think I think there are two commands that I want to have work that are kind of interrelated. The easier ones, in quotes, are to pull down a repository and to pull down changes to a repository. And so those were oaf clone URL and oaf, what was it? Oaf pull. Okay. So we're gonna, I suppose, you could pass origin master, we're just gonna ignore it. And actually, instead of cloning a URL, we are going to make the executive decision that we will clone a GitHub repository. And GitHub repositories are frequently identified by the username of the person who owns the repository, / and then the project name. Okay, so GCKW is my GitHub username, Agoraphobia is the project name. So I'm going to say oaf clone this. What I want that to do is create a folder called Agoraphobia, and then within that folder, go ahead and pull down some stuff. Now, the reason I said that these two things were related is because really oaf clone is going to call oaf pull. It's going to create the directory, then kind of go into that directory and then run oaf pull. So we should start with oaf pull, right? Because clone kind of depends on that. Well, sort of. There's a problem with oaf pull, and that is that, well, it has to know what repository it's pulling from, right? So we have to kind of define these things both at the same time. And yeah, so we're going to drill down into these. Let's at least get it so that at least I can run this syntax. So oaf clone GCKW Agoraphobia. There. Lua cannot open. Oops. Right. Yeah. Boom, there we go. Okay, so that passes and doesn't crash. I'd like it to at least do something useful to identify the command that was run. Okay, so the interesting thing here is that oaf, if we run oaf on its own, it's not going to. We don't really have anything to do. This is a command that has to then have a sort of a subcommand that we're passing it. So I think what we're going to do is we'll use the same strategy that we did to make sure that we've got the arg variable available to us. And I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm not even going to worry about the arg, the number of args available. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say local, I'm going to call them commands. Well, no, I'm just going to call it command. I'm going to create an empty table called command, and then I'm going to say function command dot pull. I think this is valid syntax. I'm going to say print pull oaf pull. Yeah, there. And then I'm going to create a function command dot clone. And I'm going to say print oaf clone. Okay, let's make sure that that at least doesn't crash. It doesn't crash. And then I'm going to try and run command arg1. Syntax error near and blah, 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 blah. Oh, sorry, I want to actually call that function. Cool, okay. So I run, yeah, the command that I ran clearly was, what? Oh, okay, my history is all messed up now. Okay, yeah, clear and clone Github Agoraphobia. That's great. And of course, now if I run this with pull, it's going to say oaf pull. Okay. So now we have a way of at least kind of determining what it is that we're going to run. I think I'll add one more, which will eventually, we'll call this help. And we'll eventually care about what this does. But we'll probably print usage here. So we'll say, actually, I think if I run git, it does, yeah, so git gives us all of this information. So yeah, so it has the usage stuff and it says, hey, here are all the things that you can do. And if I say git help, I get that message as well. We could probably do the same thing. Usage. Coming soon. Whoops. Okay. In fact, maybe we'll never do that. Who knows? So then git command arg1. I think I'll say or help. So then if we run this without anything, we get the usage message. We get the usage message. All right, cool. So now that's a way of us kind of separating out these individual commands. One other modification that I'm going to make, though, is that we're going to forward along arg to all of these functions, because clone clearly needs to know what it's trying to do. Some of these may not care about the argument, so we just won't bother to update the receiver, and I think that should be fine, because yeah, it doesn't particularly care what we do. So if I run pull, it says oaf pull, and it passed it this argument, but command pull didn't need an argument, so fine, it just got ignored. What I'll do here is say get oaf clone arg2 just to make sure that we're actually getting the value. And where's my clone one? Ba-ba-ba. Okay, cool. So now it knows that it's supposed to be cloning Github Agoraphobia. So yeah, let's start with this clone command and think about what we wanted to do. So it should do the following. It should make a directory called Agoraphobia relative to the current directory. I suppose we can just say it's going to be /Agoraphobia. From wherever we call it, it's going to try and create a folder called Agoraphobia in the current directory. Then it should make a file in Agoraphobia. I'm not going to say in. I'm going to say it should make a file called Agoraphobia, and we're going to use a dot file. And the reason that you use dot at the beginning of files on Linuxy systems and in OpenOS is because they generally tend to be hidden. If you run ls, it's not going to show them. If you run ls, you can pass it a flag to show dot files if you want, but it's the same as kind of hidden files on Windows and whatnot. Okay. So we'll go ahead and create a .oaf file, and anything that we need to kind of uniquely identify this file, we'll go ahead and throw in there. Uniquely identify this repository, we'll throw in there. So then when we run oaf pull, it can go ahead and look at that .oaf file and say, oh yeah, this is supposed to be synchronizing with such and such GitHub repository. So it should write Github Agoraphobia to the .oaf file. Okay? And actually, I'm going to change that requirement a little bit. I'm going to say it needs to make a table of, I don't know, repo metadata, so info about the repository. And then it needs to write a serialization of that table to, yeah, Agoraphobia /.oaf. And the reason for this is that I think we may eventually want to store more information. So to give you one example, one of the ways that you can determine whether or not we need to update a file is by hashing the file and then comparing the hash. And if we do that, then that's great. But we would need to store that somewhere, and we may want to put that in .of as well. Now, we're not going to have to worry about serialization. That's something that we get from OpenOS. Now, that means it only exists in OpenOS, right? Well, it's a Lua file, so in theory, we should be able to just steal it and put it in our repository, and then we can just use it, right? In fact, let's look. So Open Computers, loot OpenOS. If we go to lib, there is a file called serialization. And this does some stuff to basically take a table and make it into a string. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this, and we can go ahead and pull this down. So I want to create, let's create src, and I want to call this vendor. So we'll have basically source code that shouldn't ever, that's something that we'll eventually have to build, and vendor, and then assign. Well, does this doesn't have info in it. Okay, well, that's fine. We'll create a directory in vendor called OpenOS so that if we're stealing stuff from other third parties, we know where to put it. So then, I have a different Vim open as well. Fair enough. Let's wget this. Whoa, wget. There we go. And then I'll just move serialization.lua into src vendor OpenOS. Okay. Fair enough. Then let's see. What was I doing? Yeah. We'll go back in here, and let's test this thing. Let's say meta equals that. Well, local meta equal. Oh, I need to be putting locals on all of these, don't I? Yes. Actually, no, I shouldn't have to do that with these because we're already putting them on a local command variable, so I don't need to worry about that. Okay, so local meta equals that, and we'll just say foo equals 3, bar equals 5 in there, right? And then let's just, for the sake of it, print serialize meta. And that's not going to work because we need to actually require it, but we should be able to require it if I go ahead and say require, and I think I can say up a directory and src vendor OpenOS serialization. Let's try running this the way that we had been before. Nope, I can't attempt to call a nil value. Okay. Oh, we're right. Local serialize equals that. Attempt to call a table value, up value, serialize. What? All right, let's look at the docs for OpenOS serialization. There we go. APIs. Serialization. Oh, it's serialization.serialize. Okay, fair enough. Serialization equals that. And then we'll say here, serialization.serialize. Let's see if that works. Hey, look at that. It gives us this lovely string. It printed us out something that's nice and readable. Man, it would have been nice to be using this earlier in the series when we had all these tables and we're like, I wonder what's in there. Guess we'll never know. Okay, but anyway, so that converts the thing into a string, and then in theory, we should be able to unserialize that as well. Cool. So let's go ahead and get started with this whole making a folder thing. Well, so in theory, we could there's a file system library in OpenOS, which we could also require, and we could leverage that to make the directory. But honestly, easier, that's not going to exist here, and I don't think that's one that we can as easily port, because I don't think it's going to do the same sort of things. Easier is to just shell out. So we'll say os.execute, and this is going to run a command in the host. So this will actually run a bash command here, or it'll run a Lua command on OpenOS. I did just test that. So we'll go ahead and just say make dir, and I'll just do that Agoraphobia for now. And then we don't even have to worry about figuring out where our current directory is and blah, 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 blah. We'll just say, hey, run this shell command, and that will work in both environments, and then we don't have to worry about it. Of course, I've hard-coded Agoraphobia in here. That's not quite right, is it? So what we should do is say that, let's see. Actually, let me test this. I think user repo equals arg2 match, and then we would say some pattern which is just not a /, right? So anything that is not a forward slash up to that, then a forward slash, and then anything. Except we want to capture here. Well, there. And we want to capture here. I wonder if that works. Writing in not regex is difficult. Print user and print repo. Just run that. Okay, cool. That extracts KCKW and Agoraphobia. Nice. Okay, this pattern matching isn't half bad. Okay, so os execute make dir repo. Now, interesting thing is going to happen. I think if the repository already exists. What am I doing? Not like that. Repo. If the repository exists, well, what happens if we say make dir agoraphobia? Yeah, oh, that's gonna fail. So that's a bummer. In theory, we should handle that, but I'm not gonna worry about it. We're just gonna say, well, we'll let the crashes exist as they are, and as needed we can go back and kind of handle those. But that's assuming that if you tried to check out a directory and the directory already exists, well, that's kind of on you in the first place. We're making a deliberate choice not to be super protective here, and part of that is a matter of just keeping the file small because we're dealing with an environment that is not crazy huge anyway. I guess we can use that as the same justification for not not having a usage command. Okay. So, yeah, there's meta stuff, blah, blah, blah. So, assuming that we've made the directory, well, now we can just io.open repo /.off. And so we'll say local meta file equals that. And then we'll say local meta equals, let's see, user equals user, repo equals repo. And then meta file write meta. No, serialization. Yeah, we gotta serialize it first. Dot serialize meta. And then meta file close. Okay, let's run that and see what it does. Local meta file. What? Oh, right, because we have to open this file for writing. It's going, that did file that didn't exist. And okay, we can't create the directory. Let's go ahead and just bake this into the command that we're running. Rumdir agoraphobia. Actually, you know what I should do is just remove forcibly that directory. Can I remove it? What? Oh, sorry, recursive and forcibly. Okay, so that ran. Now let's look. Now there's a thing called agoraphobia, and I think this is. Can I show hidden files? Okay, cool. Hidden files. Yeah, so now we see there's a .git folder in here, and there's a .o file. And look at that, it's got this in here. So hooray, that's awesome. Okay. So I said that was just about all that we actually have to do with git clone, with off clone, but that's not entirely true. We also need to, the last part of that was that we need to off pull. So we need to change our current directory into into the directory that we just created. And we could use OpenOS libraries, but again, why not just execute, right? It just seems simpler. os.execute, cd, into the repo directory, and which is how you run a command after the first command succeeds. We'll say off pull. Cool. So if we run that, oaf not found. Right, so that's that. That's not quite right. Well, actually, now I'm curious. If I run, let's see, os.execute ls. Do I get the results of running this? Local res equals this, and then print res. I don't know. Oh no, okay, so it does actually put stuff into standard out. We should clear the screen as well just to make this a little cleaner. Man, this test command is getting okay, but it does report that stuff standard. Okay, so it is not changing the current directory, which is kind of a bummer. Okay, so the reason that this is a little bit annoying is that in theory we want to just be able to run pull. Well, we want to run pull from within the directory because it's going to be looking for this .o file in the current directory. But so I can't just say, command.pull, because then it's going to look for the directory that we're currently in, not the one that we just created. But I think, let's just go ahead and pass an override. So we'll just say dir equals repo. Right. And then in command.pull, we can check and see if there is a directory specified. And if not, we'll just assume it's the current directory. And actually, I'm going to change this real quick. I'm just going to say it's going to be dir./.repo. Okay. Let's run this. Okay, so it runs off pull for some reason. Not because we told it to. Okay, so now this is going to take arg, and we're going to say local dir equals arg dir or dot. Actually, I think, never mind. I think we can just pass repo. Okay. Then inside here, let's just try and read the meta file and print it out just for a starting point. We'll say local meta equals io.open, and we'll say dir joined with /.of and read all. Whoops. And we have to deserialize this entire thing. So serialization dot deserialize this. And we'll print meta. Well, we might as well not deserialize it because if we're printing it just to test, delete that. Yeah, we'll print meta for now. Let's see if that works. Yes, okay. So now we're getting the correct file, and that's great. And indeed, if I were to go into Agoraphobia and run Lua up a directory bin oaf and just say pull, oh no. Oh yeah, now of course it's relative file stuff is not going to work. Oh, that's interesting because the package direct it's relative to our current directory, not relative to that. So okay, something to be aware of. Okay. Yeah, ignoring all of that. Okay, so pull has that, and now pull actually has to do the work, which is where it's going to be really helpful that we have the ability to package stuff up, because we're going to have to split this up into multiple libraries. And the way that we're going to do that, so meta is that, and we can do serialization dot deserialize to make it into a table. And of course, if we print this, it's not going to be particularly helpful. Oh, no, deserialize. They called it unserialize. Oops, come on. Unserialize. Attempted to call a nil value check arg. Oh no. All right, so actually this OpenOS library does assume that there is a global value called check arg, which doesn't exist for us. So our unserialization doesn't quite work. So I think this is not something that we're going to be able to continue to test inside Linux. We'll have to kind of write this bit here and test more of it in game as we get more complicated. But let's assume that works, because it ought to. And okay, so all the check arg is doing is verifying that the thing that we're passing into it is a string. But whatever, it's fine. You know what? Actually, since it's our version anyway, let's just strip out the check arg, right? Check arg. There, remove that, and then see. Cool. Yes. Now it has a table, and if I were to say print meta.repo, Agoraphobia. Great. So now we have to think about what grabbing the repository actually looks like. And with oaf, I'm not going to... So with Git, you're not really dealing with files. You're dealing with a sequence of changes to files. So you have a bunch of stuff that you're sending up and down the wire. We're not going to worry about all of that. All that I want to do is grab all of the files in the latest thing that has been pushed and pull them down. Now, if we look, the way that we're going to do this is obviously not trying to implement the Git protocol or anything crazy like that. We're going to use GitHub's HTTPS API because we have an HTTPS capacity in our internet card. So we can just do that. And you can make commits through that interface. You can pull down stuff that way. And yeah, it's great. Okay, so let's look at that then. GitHub API V3 has all of this fancy stuff. We need to create you can say you need to create an access token, which you can acquire programmatically for applications that are not websites. And that's something that I will do, actually. And in fact, if you go into settings on GitHub, you can actually just generate a personal access token, which allows you to access the GitHub API for just your account. So I'm going to go ahead and generate a new token. And I got to put in my password here, which I don't have to put in. And I can go ahead and say what this is allowed to do. And I basically just want to say it has access to repository stuff. And I'm going to call this one Agoraphobia. And I will generate that token. And it gives me this. And of course, I will have deleted this by the time you can actually see this video. You actually have to copy it because it's going to remove itself pretty darn soon. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this and generate a new one just so that you guys don't see it. All right, so having grabbed a new token, I'm going to create a file called .github. And I'll just create that in my home directory. And we can do this in the game as well. And I'm just going to paste in that token. And just it's gonna be right there. And then we can code assuming that this exists. And the reason that's important is because we needed to access the API. So let's look at, let's see, get data trees. So there is an API that the get tree object creates a hierarchy between files in a Git repository. You can use a get tree to create the relationship between directories and the files they contain. Blah 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 blah. Okay. So what we need to do. This is kind of documenting a bunch of information regarding, let's just look at this example output. So someone says, okay, for repositories, this owner, this repo, get trees, and then they give some sort of way to identify the tree. Here's the response that we get back. They'll say, hey, here's the path. So file.rb, so a Ruby file. And they'll say, hey, it is a blob, which means it's a file, basically. It'll give us a URL of where that blob exists. And then they'll say, hey, here's actually a different path that's a subdirectory, and that's also a tree. And so you can go ahead and grab information about that tree completely independently. The gist of it is this. If we give it a tree, we're going to get back an identifier for a tree. We're going to get back a list of entries that are either going to be files that have URLs that we can download them from, in theory, or they're going to be other trees which map to directories. So every directory is its own sort of nested thing that we have to worry about. Although one thing to note is that if we do get the blob, it's going to be base 64 encoded, which means we do need to decode it. Probably easier is to not use the API for grabbing files and to just use this raw GitHub user content thing that also happens to exist that matches the path that we're dealing with. So yeah. And after trawling the docs for a little bit, here's an example. So api.github.com/repo/git/agoraphobia/git/trees/master. Because we can look at the master tree and that'll just give us kind of the initial starter tree. And we can see it's not truncated. Here are all of the entries that we got back. So it gives us this SHA and it says, hey, here's the URL. And master just aliases to the latest commit tree. It says, hey, there's a readme.markdown and that's a blob file type. There is bin, and that's another tree. And to figure out what's in there, you'd have to go ahead and pull that down. Come on. There we go. If we wanted to see what's in snippets, it's going to say, hey, there's a file called move.lua, and that's it. Okay, so this gives us an idea of how we could go about recursively grabbing a bunch of stuff. And I suppose, you know what, let's try and do this here. So now the challenge is that at any point, we are going to be grabbing one tree, which is basically maps to one current directory. So we need to kind of change that directory before doing stuff, right? Let's go ahead and say we're going to process, we'll say pull tree, and we need to give it the directory that it should be pulling to, which in this case is just dir. And we need to give it so if we think about this, we're pulling each tree we're pulling into a particular directory. So let's go ahead and say that we're going to start by just saying pull tree, and we'll say pull HTTPS get, well, let me paste this in and we'll modify it. There we go. Not that one. The master tree. And Github Agoraphobia will have to be generated. So we'll say meta.repo owner, what was it, user / meta, I can delete to that, dot repo / get trees master. So what we're saying is pull this tree URL into this directory. And we'll go ahead and just say, in this case, it's that current directory. Okay? Now, of course, that means we have to write that function. In theory, I would like this to be something that we put externally into a GitHub library. In fact, I'd probably like to take this API stuff out entirely as well. But actually, you know what? Yeah, let's do exactly that. I'm just going to say pull tree master dir, and then we'll put this stuff. We'll extract this out into a separate file at a later point. I'm just going to put this in here right now. I'm going to say pull tree, and we'll say sha and dir. And I'm gonna sort of hack and slash my way through trying to get this to work. We're gonna say make dir p, which is gonna make dir, but gracefully allow it to already exist. I'm pretty sure. Let's double check that. ls agoraphobia. No, okay. What directories do we have? Where are we even? Aha, we're in agoraphobia. Right. Okay. Make dir p agoraphobia. Yeah, okay. It's fine with it. It's fine with it existing because if it already exists, we pass that flag to it. So make dir p dir. So first off, make sure that the directory we're about to pull this tree into actually exists. Then we need to get the contents of a file. And I think instead of using os execute now, so in OpenOS, we'll use the HTTPS library, but in our case, we need to use io.popen, which is opening a process, and we will just curl the URL, which is going to be vaguely like that, but not at all like that. Oh, you know what? We can't just pass in the SHA. We also need to pass in, we need to pass in the meta table too, because we're going to need to know what the repository user and stuff are as well. So we'll say local process. I don't know. HTTPS equals that. I don't know. Meta.user / meta.repo. And I don't know if that's valid, but we'll see. We're going to find out. Let's just try and print out https.read all for right now, and then https close. We'll have to convert this into valid options later. Attempted index and nil value. What? Oh, pull doesn't have the wait. Serialize, unserialize. What? Oh, right. I forgot to update this signature here. Meta sha dir. Okay, so it gets that. This is printing stuff out to standard error too. Actually, we could tell curl to be quiet. And just to make sure this is actually capturing it, we'll say result is ... that. Okay, so it got that as the result. Now, Lua can't parse JSON by default, so we're going to have to... We're not going to write a JSON parser. At least I hope not. Yeah, we're not going to write a JSON parser. We are going to kind of scan until we find tree, and then wait until basically capture everything from tree open bracket to close bracket, and then do some pattern matching to extract the information that we actually care about here. Oh, and of course I forgot to modify what we're actually pulling here. Trees ... SHA. That should actually pull master. There we go. Now we're actually getting the master. And that's what we want. Okay, so we've got that as our, let's say local result equals HTTPS read all. And I'm going to say, yeah, then we can go ahead. Yeah, sure. We can go ahead and close this. We'll say entries. What did it look like? It was, yeah, tree. Okay. Say entries equals result match. And I'm going to say we're looking for quote tree colon and this. And then anything that's not, so I want to capture inside here anything that is not a closed bracket. Yeah. So not a closed bracket. Oof. Oh, I need to escape these. Yeah. Escape that and escape that. Ugh, that's gross. Followed by a closed bracket. Let's see what that comes up with. Print entries. Wow, I think that actually worked. That, yeah, okay, so that extracted everything inside there. That's great. Okay. I'm gonna say let's go ahead and pull that onto, tack that onto our read up here. I'm gonna say local entries. Oops, is an empty table, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say for yeah, for entry in, and now we need to use gmatch. So we'll say result gmatch, and here now I'm going to match a open curly brace, then anything that is not a closed curly brace, I want to capture, not a closed curly brace. I want multiple. I want to capture that, and then a closed curly brace. I think. I don't think I actually have to escape those. And then we'll say table.insert entries entry. And then let's just print entries 1 and just see what that extracted. I think that's going to split. Okay, that did not work. I wonder if I need to escape these. I think I do. No. Really? Let's test an example. So I have a string that is blah. Let's use an example. So I'm going to say s equals blah, and I just want to get everything that is inside that. So if I say g, well, I can test the pattern by just using g sub. I'm going to say no, I don't. S match this, and then everything that is not this, multiple, and then this, and that space needs to not be there, I think. Well, I mean, it shouldn't matter. No, that works. So why doesn't it work in my case? What am I doing differently here? Well, I don't. Yeah, so I don't need those escape characters. Oh, yeah. Whoops. Yeah, I need this around there. Okay, that's a gross pattern. Okay, cool. But this gives me this splits our entries into separate entries. So if I look at entry number 2, that's a different thing, and that's great. But now I want to get fancier. So I'm going to say I want to create local. Let's see. I'm going to call this JSON entry and not entry. I'm going to say local entry equals that. And what I want to do is I want to say entry dot local entry equals, and I want to assign the tree, and I want to assign so the tree is going to equal something, and the path is going to equal something. And I think actually that's it, because rather than use the blob API, we can use yeah, we can use this raw GitHub user content URL strategy by just tracking paths along and along and along to actually pull things out. So we won't worry about that. So let's, out of this JSON entry, let's pattern match the path. So JSON entry match, and it's going to be path, and then some white space, and then actually I think it's just one white space maybe, and then capture everything that is not a double quote, and then there's a double quote there. Okay, JSON entry match, and then it's the same thing. So we're not quite building a JSON parser. We're just wishing that we were, honestly. Okay, and then instead of matching path, we're going to match tree, and then we add that entry. Cool. And in fact, we don't even have to create that temporary thing. We can go ahead and do this all right in line. And let's print entries1.path and just see if that worked. Nope. Too close on line 29. Oh, I need a comma here. There we go. Okay, so it found, so the entries1.path is that, and tree is nil, because there's no tree in that case. But the second one should have a tree. If we look, no, it does not. Why not? Let's print JSON entry. Figure out why that one didn't match. Oh, right, URL. Yeah, okay, I'm not tracking. Yeah, I should not be. This is not tree, this is URL. Ah, tree. So then if we look at the URL here, well, and actually, I guess then we also need to grab type out of there, don't we? Oops. Oops. I don't need to be printing these entries. Okay, so there we go. We get the URL, and if I look at the type here, I don't like the syntax highlighting. Okay, so the type is grabbed as well. All right. So pulling the tree, what are we doing? So now we have transformed this JSON thing into a list of Lua data structures that we can actually loop over. So I'm going to say for entry in entries do. And now we actually have to process each of those entries that we got back in our response. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's worry about the trees in a moment, because that's going to be some recursion. We don't want to get into that. So we'll say if entry.type equals blob, then great. And then we'll say else to do. So those are the subtrees. Anything that's a blob, we should be able to just go ahead and grab using this URL scheme. So let's go ahead and copy that. And the URL is right here, https raw githubusercontent.com, blah, 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 blah. We need to then put in the username and / the repo. And we're assuming that everything is going to be against master. And then we need to have kind of the remaining path. So we'll go ahead and make some of these things strings. Yeah, so we have, let's see, meta dot user. Yeah, I gotta string this up. Meta user, and then / meta repo / master, and then entry dot path. Okay, so this should resolve to for example, grabbing our README, and that's wonderful. Now we're just building this random string here. We're not actually using it for anything. I'm going to go ahead and say os execute wget force, and then this whole thing. And actually, let's just go ahead and join these two strings. The last thing that I am going to add as well, we can go ahead and toss those in here actually. We'll find a better way to construct all of this. I'm just trying to get this to a point where it works, which I know is going to take a long time. That's okay. In theory, we could add a cache busting URL as well, just to make sure we're not hitting the cache, but that's fine. wget is something that will work both in the Linux environment and in Open Computer, so that's great. Yeah, I think that should probably work. Let's see what that does. Give it a shot. Attempt to call table value on line 33. So for entry in entries. Ooh. Oh, it doesn't, yeah, it doesn't like you doing just iterating over a table. So let's go ahead and say iPairs. I'm gonna say, I don't care the index here. Thanks, Gary. There we go. Invalid option F. Oh, okay, yeah. wget on Linux is not like -F. Fair enough, because that's not the same. Again, this is me complaining as a programmer of if you're gonna use the same name, it better work the same way. And it's doing all that stuff. Okay. Power station Lua.1 save. Why did it do that? I'm confused. Well, let's look at what it did. Let's refresh this. What happened in here? Oh, weird. It did not download those to the right place. Oh, right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And of course, and now it automatically prefixed everything with these .1s because it's going, oh, otherwise it'd be collision. And instead of asking or failing, it just tried to do that for us anyway. I mean, I've got some stuff in here I needed to clean up anyway, so it's fine. Yeah, so we need to not just wget, we need to actually wget it to a place, which we can do. We can just concatenate as the second argument the path where we want to put it. So not the URL path, but the file path. And we have, so it should be, yeah, just the dir. I should probably put some of these on one line. So dir, and then, what is it, slash? Yeah, I think. And then entry.path. So the directory that we're looking at, slash, readme.markdown or whatever. Let's give that one a shot. Okay. No, I don't think so. Okay, again, wget behaving differently. In OpenOS, you can pass the file name as a second argument. If we look at the manual for wget, URL, blah, 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 blah. I forget exactly how you tell it what output. Yeah, you have to say -o. Oh, no, I'm wrong. -o is not the right, not the right flag. It puts the output of the information in there, which is not quite what we wanted. As a matter of fact, it's just capital O. Okay, so there we go. We still get the noise. And now if we look in here, well, look at that. We now have managed to pull everything down from GitHub. So, hooray. Except we're only doing that on the one level. So now, we get to do some recursion. Laddie. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so what are we going to recurse then? Well, we're going to say pull tree. And here we're not going to worry about tail call optimized stuff like we did in the last video. We're going to say pull tree. And gosh, this is getting huge because of me refusing to join these lines. Well, I'll refactor this into a bunch of helper functions. So we're passing along the same meta. The only difference now is that, well, we want to pass a different SHA. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I wasn't passing. I need to actually pull the SHA, don't I? Yeah, when I'm building up these entries, I don't care about the entry URL at all. I do care about the entry SHA. So let's grab the SHA, because the SHA is going to be how we access the tree. Okay. So I'm going to pull entry.sha, and I'm going to say I need to pull it into the current directory slash entry.path. So we're going to say use that as the base directory. And now we go, well, thankfully, we're creating that directory at the very start here, so that's great. And yeah, okay. I think there are going to be some issues here, but let's give it a shot and see if this naive recursion just works. Okay, so I already noticed some issues. A lot of 404s here. We were looking for, yeah. So when we're constructing the URL, we're not doing the best of jobs. And yeah, if we look at what it generates, it did create this, and it wasn't able to find anything, or it wasn't able to get anything into these files. It was not able to find those URLs. The reason for that is that when we're constructing the this URL to download, we are assuming that entry path is the fully qualified path from the top of the repository. It's only the path relative to the base of the subtree that we happen to be looking at. So we actually have to pass along that subtree, or that path prefix, I guess, for lack of a better term. So at the very beginning, our path prefix is just going to be an empty string, but going forward, it's got to be well. Let's inject our path prefix into here first. Path prefix. Yeah, there we go. I don't know why I have dots in. I have suffix dots and prefix dots. That's awful. Shame on me for all of this. Okay. So yeah, then when we pass this as the argument, what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, I'm expecting you to pass in the subtree. Now your prefix path is going to be the prefix path plus slash, I think, the entry dot path. Okay, let's try that. No, something wrong. Prefix path. What? Oh, I called it path prefix. Fine. Prefix path, path prefix. There we go. Yeah, fine. And give that a shot. Okay, you can see I'm clearly not concatenating the URLs correctly for some reason. Let's see exactly why that might be. Oh. Ugh. All right. Local next prefix. Oh, actually, never mind. It's a path, the original prefix plus the next directory, and then a slash, I think. Yeah, there we go. I think we're now pulling everything down. Let's go ahead and take a look. Yes. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so now we are recursively able to pull stuff. Okay, so I've joined these lines. I don't like this. We're definitely going to have to consolidate these into some helper functions. To say nothing of the fact of extracting pull tree for the most part into a GitHub library and things like that. But this does seem to work. So we are now able to clone a repository and pull down those files, which is very exciting. Now, because the syntax isn't exactly the same for some of the tools that we're using, we're going to have to make some modifications to get this to work with OpenOS. But that is something that we are going to have to tackle into the next episode because, man, this is running so long. And with that, I'm going to say so long to you. So I hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for watching. And let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think about these longer, very code-intensive things. I think some of it is part and parcel with just the premise of the series. But if you're really enjoying it, then great, we can lean in. If you're not, we'll have to find a way to make it slightly more entertaining. But we will have to tackle that in the next video, and I will see you then. Cheers.